Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. As per usual, I'm your host, Luke the Jolly Bean. It's wonderful to be back, to be honest, because, not that anybody listening to this will actually know this, but I actually have recorded in a very, very long time. I actually took the whole month of March off. And decided not to record anything. The long and short of it, the reason behind it is the fact of I was looking at things I should look at for April in the future, and I basically realised that I have 14, at the time anyway, 14 episodes pre-recorded. That's 14 weeks of just loads of episodes ready to go, and it kind of made it a bit difficult to plan to what to do for not just November but also April. So I figured I'd take all of March off, kind of rest, reset, and all that jazz, and then come back strong in April. So this is my first ever review that I've done in a month, and it feels absolutely wonderful, and I feel rehydrated and refreshed. So it's absolutely wonderful. So for the first time in a month, I finally get to say housekeeping, because I like to keep my house nice and clean. Oh, it feels so good to say that. Actually, I haven't mentioned what the topic is today, but I'll get onto that in a minute. I'm just in a very good, happy spirits mood. So make sure that you follow me on X at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating. Also on Spotify, you can leave comments down below now. So make sure you leave your comments down below on Spotify, because that will be absolutely wonderful, because I want to hear all you wonderful beans feedback. So today is going to be a book review. It's going to look into the Torchwood universe with Torchwood Another Life Book 1. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm going to give you a quick update on my adventures so far with Torchwood. I've watched the first series of Torchwood. That review is now out. So if you haven't listened to it, please do go back and check out my full breakdown of series 1 of Torchwood. It was absolutely wonderful. It was brilliant. It was gay. It was horny. It was funny. It was silly. It was X-Files in Wales. And the Welsh accent, I just melt for the Welsh accent. I love it. And Gwen is gorgeous, and yeah, everything about it brilliant. I've spoiled it, to be honest. You're probably thinking, why should I listen to the review? Because it is a good in-depth review, and I'm quite proud of it. But that's the long and short of it. I was a pretty big fan. So as I have done with Doctor Who, I decided that I wanted to look into the books. I wanted to deep dive into the Torchwood universe, this side of the Doctor Who universe. And it starts off here with Another Life, book 1. I'm only really going to be looking at the first 3 books in the series. Kind of, again, if you listen to my Doctor Who book reviews, and if you listen to any of my reviews on Doctor Who, you will know that I tend to stick with the continuity. And what I mean by that is I'll watch the show, I'll watch 1 or 2 episodes of, say, Doctor Who, and then I will read one of the books, and I try to go with the continuity. So, if one of the books is set before The Impossible Planet, for example, that's when I know, okay, I can read up to this point, then watch The Impossible Planet, and then I'll carry on reading the rest of the books, and just kind of see how they intertwine, how they connect, if there are any Easter eggs, if there's any, for example, when you read the 9th Doctor books, during obviously the first series, you get a lot of hints to Bad Wolf, and I really, really like that. And you get a few in the 10 and Rose books as well, these little hints here and there of what is to come with Torchwood and things like that. So that's the kind of idea behind it. So when series 1 came out, I think is a couple of months later to a year possibly, the first 3 books were released, which was book 1, Another Life, which is what I'm going to be reviewing today. And then you had book 2, Border Princes, and then you had book 3, which is Slow Decay. And that's kind of how it's going to be. I'm going to review the first 3 Torchwood books, and then I'm going to go off and we're going to look into Doctor Who proper, and then we're going to look into series 3 of Doctor Who with the Doctor and Martha and all that. But before we get there, we've got to enjoy Torchwood as it is, as a whole. And I'm just really, really excited to get into the topic today. So the book synopsis is only a short one, but it goes as follows. Thick black clouds are blotting out the skies over Cardiff as 24 inches of rain fall in 24 hours. The city centre's drainage system collapses. The capital's homeless are being murdered, their mutilated bodies left lying in the soaked streets surrounds the Baldar nuclear facility. Tracked down by Torchwood, the killer calmly drops 8 stories to his death, but the killings don't stop. Their investigations lead Jack Harkness, Gwen Cooper, and Tosh to a monster in the bathroom, a mystery in an army base, and a hunt for stolen nuclear fuel rods. Meanwhile, Owen Harper goes missing from the hub when a game in second reality leads him to an old friend. Something is coming, forcing its way through the rift straight into Cardiff Bay. And that is the synopsis. As for my thoughts on the book so far, so my first impressions, I'm about 67 so pages in now, about 240 or so pages. Like these sort of BBC novels, they're never really long. You know, the longest I've ever read is about 300 pages. They're short novellas. You can get them done, especially if you're an avid reader like me, within a week. But when it comes to books like this, I like to take my time. I like to read a few pages, a chapter here or there, and really sort of taking all the bits and pieces. I've already written down notes about continuity that I've noticed as it ties in with the show, which I'll talk about then when we get to the actual review itself. But so far, I'm really interested. I'm really engaged. One thing that I've found with this book, and what I've actually found with the Doctor Who books as well, is a fact of usually the first book in the series in terms of, again, Doctor Who, when you had the first book with the Ninth Doctor and you had the first book with the 10th Doctor, what they spend majority of the beginning doing is setting up who that Doctor is or what's going on and kind of really introduce you to the idea of Doctor Who and the whole idea behind it. And that's what I found here with this first book, is the fact of what I would imagine is that just in case you never got around to watching Torchwood on TV, but you stumbled on this book in Waterstones or Debatemus or whatever, this would be a good introduction. So the beginning of it is very much of like, this is Gwen, this is who Gwen is, this is Gwen's thoughts, feelings, this is what she looks like. This is Jack's thoughts and feelings, and blah blah blah. He's the leader of the team. This is Owen. This is Yanto. This is Tosh. You know, this is the hub. This is what happens at the hub. This is blah, blah, blah. This is Torchwood. Like, that's sort of the introduction. So for me, it was a little bit boring because I had already known all of that sort of things. I wanted to get to the action very sort of post haste. You know, I wanted us to get into it. And I imagine with the sort of next following books, you'd probably be less of that, which again, I hope and think I have my fingers crossed for anyway. So I would imagine for like a first reader who's never watched Torchwood, it would be quite interesting and intriguing. It was just a bit boring for me personally because I already knew all this information. I just wanted to get the story to get going. When it does start get going, though, it feels like Torchwood. There's swearing, there's violence, there's gore. There are moments where you're not sure what's going to happen. It feels very X-Files. You're not sure. I don't know how to explain it. You're just not sure about what is going on. You know, the mystery is slowly being unraveled. And all the characters sound like they should sound. They feel like they should sound and act, which I really appreciate for that. I don't really want to get into the story spoilers because, again, I want to leave that out until the actual review. And not just that, like I said, I'm not that far in anyway. But I'm a little bit confused in what's going on. And again, I know what I said earlier about the mystery, like you slowly starting to unravel things. But there is that little bit of sort of confusion because you have the beginning of the story, which kind of begins with these guards being just absolutely slaughtered, being killed by this mysterious person. Then you get this businessman who basically throws himself off a building very calmly, very relaxed, like he's literally falling back as on a trust fall, basically, at a work exercise. And then it jumps to Owen and Tosh in the hub, and Tosh has basically made Owen a virtual reality headset, which back in like 2007, 2008, when this book was written, was still very sort of bleeding edge sort of technology. It wasn't very mainstream as much as it is nowadays. And again, it was kind of wonderful reading that and knowing my background from university, that I got a bachelor's degree in augmented reality and virtual reality and like game design and all that. It was kind of wonderful to be able to read those moments and trying to see how accurate and close the writer got, which he got pretty close, to be honest, to actually what it was like when I was in college and university when you were testing out these sort of technologies and that sort of thing. So for that accuracy, he's pretty close, to be honest. So I love those little bits, but it was just that moment of like, okay, so we've just had this really brutal murder, and now we're doing this whole thing with this virtual reality headset. And I thought to myself, as I'm reading, is the fact of, was that just the setup? Was that just the beginning to get you into the story, to get you into the whole idea of Torchwood? And now this part with Tosh and Owen and what follows, is that the main story? You know what I mean? Like have the sort of intrigue, the subplot that pulls you in, and then sort of evolve, kind of like The Simpsons do. You have that weird subplot to get the film going, get the show going, and then you find out halfway through, okay, this is the main plot, blah 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 blah. And that's the kind of thought that I've got. It probably is, it probably isn't. It's just the fact, this idea that Owen is in this virtuality headset. He's in this play space called Second Reality, I think it's called Second Life, and then obviously the title of the story is called Another Life. So I was thinking, is it linked in with that? Is the murders linked in with this new online game or something? So I'm just trying to piece the puzzles, the bits of the puzzle together. But I'm interested. I'm intrigued. That's the main thing. Is like I don't feel like this isn't Torchwood. I'm sitting there going, this is Torchwood. This was what Jack and feels like. This is what Owen feels like. I'm really loving the characters. I love how it has that feel of it. Because that's what I was worried about. I was really, really worried going into these books that they were going to water it down. That it was going to be like, oh, kids might read these. We can't be too horny. We can't be too sexual. We can't swear, blah, blah. We can't do that. Kids might read these. Like, no. They've left that in. They've left the sweariness, and again, I can't really say much about the horniness. Really, there are sexual jokes and innuendos here or there, but they've still kept the essence of what Torchwood is, the idea behind Torchwood, and the idea behind the show, or what I know of it from the first series, anyway. And I really love and appreciate for that. So yeah, first impressions. I'm still very much interested. Again, that might change. By all means, I could get to the actual review itself, and I could be like, oh, that was a bag of poop. It might be, it might not be, but I have high hopes currently. Like I said, I'm only about 60 or so pages in, so that could change, but my hopes are very much high. So thank you very much for listening to my introduction. I do promise when we get round to the next few books, the introduction will be a lot shorter. It's just the fact of I was excited to be back, and also the fact of I had to do an updates and let everybody know the whole idea behind this series. But I'm going to go off now and finish the book, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about my thoughts and feelings on Torchwood Another Life. So I'll see you in a ticky-tacky second. And welcome back, everybody. So I have just this minute, like just a few minutes ago, as of pressing record, finished this book. I'm a bit divisive on it. I am very, very torn, to be honest. But as I do with all my reviews, I will start with the positive, and then we'll lead into sort of the negative. Even though I would say for this book, it's not overly negative, but there are a few things that kind of really pick at me. First of all, sort of first impressions. For me, this was a very middle of the road book. It's a very average book. If I have to give it like a 5 out of 5 star sort of thing, 5 stars being absolutely incredible, like changed my life, and like 1 star being terrible, I'd give it a 3.5. It's very middle of the road. It has essence of being great and amazing, and being like a 4-star book, but there are a few things for me that personally pull it back. But it's still, like, average is still good. It's still a good score. As I said in the introduction, with my sort of first impressions of the book so far, it does a brilliant job of setting up Torchwood. As I mentioned there, and I'll just retrace it a little bit here, is the fact of what you want from a first novel in a series is to really establish what is going on in the world. For anybody that hasn't watched the show, who picks up the book for like before they've watched the show, they need to know who the characters are, who Jack is, who Gwen is, who Owen, Yanto, Tosh. Be an introduction to them, be an introduction to the hub, what the hub looks like, an introduction to Torchwood and what they do in Cardiff and all that. So as an introduction, it does a fantastic job. The only issue that I really had is the pacing. The pacing is all over the place. 1 minute it's really quick. You've got Jack and you've got Gwen chasing a businessman through central Cardiff, and then they going through a construction site, and then Jack's got him there by gunpoint, basically telling him to calm down, back away from the edge. And this businessman is like, you can tell that there's something off about him, that he's not really, he's human, but he's not human anymore. Something is in control of him, and he's really calm, he's collected, he's more smarter and than he should be, sort of thing. You can tell that there's some sort of presence here. And then he just, well, falls back like trust falls off the back of the building with no care in the world that he's going to die. It's just the fact that it's another life, really. As again, the name of the book, it's another life. And it's a brilliant scene, it's brilliant dialogue, and you've got really great moments between Jack and this entity and Gwen, and there's loads of other moments like that. There's moments with Owen has a moment with this entity and all the other characters, and for those moments, it's brilliant. And like the parts where you've got Owen and he's in his like second reality VR headset. I love that. As I mentioned in the introduction, doing VR and virtuality and augmented reality in university. It's lovely to be able to read a book that has that in such detail, especially a book that was done all the way back in like the late 2000s. It's wonderful to read it and see how close it got. And the moments where you had Gwen, because at this point, again, I'll talk about the continuity a little bit later, but at this point of the story, Gwen is still only a few months new. She's still virtually green when it comes to Torchwood, so she's still questioning everything. She's still going, can we do this, can we do that, what kind of person is Jack? She's still figuring out who Owen is, and who Tosh is, and where she stands with Yanto. And obviously Yanto is still being very secretive because, again, I'll mention it in the continuity, but up until this book, the Cyberwoman story episode hasn't happened yet, so he's still a very sort of bit more of a recluse. And that was one of my moments in when I was breaking down season 1 of the show, was the fact of I just wish that there was more to Yanto. He just seemed like he was in the background a lot more, and then everything happened with the Cyberwoman. And then all the episodes after that, you see a little bit more of him, but you just don't get enough of him at the beginning. So I love those moments. But like I said, the pacing's all off because you get those great moments, but then you get these really slow moments that just take forever to get going. And again, no real sort of... what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of unfairness to the author, Peter Anghelides. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. But there are a lot of spelling mistakes and errors and grammatical errors and that sort of things and repeated words. And again, I don't know if it's him or if it's the because I'm reading it on the Kindle, if it's the Kindle version of it or if it's in the books. Again, I don't know. But I've read a few of the reviews after I finished this book, and majority of them mention that. So it's probably a quite common thing. I mean, as a dyslexic person as well, it tripped me up a lot. So there were moments when I was getting really into it, and then you'd have these errors, and then it would bring me up as I'm trying to stop the being like, oh, that's a double word there that shouldn't be there, and that sort of thing. So it's little things like that, and the whole alien part of it was pretty great. Like there was a really brilliant part where Jack and Gwen are going up to this apartment trying to find because. Basically, I'm trying to stay away from story spoilers, but I'll talk about the story in a little bit. But there's a part where Jack and Gwen are trying to find Waldman. Waldman was the businessman that ended his life on top of the construction site, and they're trying to figure out why Waldman did it. Like, is he the one that did all these murders? And if he is, why did he do them? So they go to his apartment to kind of investigate, try to figure it out. And they get there, and there's a woman there. She's very strange. She's very calm for some unknown reason. And she's like, I'm just there to water the plants, sort of thing. And then Jack goes into Waldman's bathroom, and there's a giant starfish. And like the visual representation I was getting in my brain was like, if you're a fan of the DC universe, you know who Starro is. Starro is like a giant fish, it's like starfish with an eyeball in his face, in his like the center, and like he can get little starfish that come out of him and then suck onto other people, and then he kind of controls them. That was the kind of visuals I was getting in my brain, because there's a giant starfish in the bath, and it starts attacking Jack, and Jack's trying to fight it, and then the tentacles are coming out, and he's trying to and like Gwen's freaking out, she doesn't know what to do, and there's a really sort of funny, sort of epic sort of moment. And in the same stage, you've got this woman in the living room who's watching all this very calmly, just in the chair, just watching it, and then Gwen's like realizing like that woman's really calm for some unknown reason. It's not until Gwen says, "Oh, go get help," that the woman gets up and she leaves. And it's little things like that. There are little twists, there are little parts in the story where you can see that things are not what they seem. There is another element to this. There's another alien element or supernatural element to all of this that we're not seeing. And again, I really appreciate that. But like I said, it's just the pacing is what really let it down for me. Is the fact that if the pacing was a bit better and there wasn't those grammatical errors here and there, I feel like it would have been a 4-star. But there were so many moments where it kind of lost me and pulled me back, or took me a while to get back into it, because like you'd go so quite fast and then it would slow down for a long time and then speed up. It'd be hard to kind of get back into that groove, to wanting to really fully invest myself back into the story. As for the sort of story itself, it revolves around a murder. There are these murders going on, and Torchwood has been brought in to try to figure out why these murders are happening, like why people are being killed. And this is what leads into them tracking down this bloke called Wildman. And he is involved somehow. And then it goes through. There's also Waldman. Then there's a soldier in a base, Applegate, and there's another person that's involved. And again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but the story itself is interesting. How it all leads into this like alien sort of conspiracy, and there's this being that controls people. And that all this being really wants to do, and like you can actually sympathize with this being. All this being really wants to do is to get home. But the problem is, because it's a very higher sort of level being, and because of the abilities that it has, it's living another life, akin to the name of the story. It's living lives through other humans, like very telepathically, like having control over them. But when it takes control, it learns all the emotions, it takes in all their memories of who they are. So every life that it takes, it learns more and it becomes more human, and you start to relate to this being, this creature, more and more. But at the same stage, you realize that this creature wants to go home, and is learning, becoming more somewhat human, like living more lives. But at the same stage, you're also the fact of it doesn't care about life at all. It doesn't care about this idea. Like every time he takes control of a character, of a person, of a character in the story, he doesn't care. He's literally, once the being is done with them, he kills them. Like he makes them commit sort of suicide. He throws them in front of bushes. He throws them off buildings and stuff like that. So there's that moment where you can relate to the character, but also the moments of like, this character's evil. It has no care, and all the character really wants to do is to go home. It wants to steal these nuclear fuel rods from Balrog nuclear facility, which if you're a Doctor Who fan, you know that was the Bad Wolf. That's Bad Wolf in Welsh. Again, I know I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but that's in Welsh, that's Bad Wolf. But also from Boomtown, season 1 with Chris Eccleston and the Slovene, that was the nuclear power station that was built because of the Slovene Prime Minister. So I love the little sort of link back into that universe, and to show it's still part of the Doctor Who universe, but it's its own strain, and I love that. But yeah, the story itself, like I said, when it's interesting, when it's got you hooked, you're all the way in. But it's those pacing moments, and it's the errors where you're like, oh god. So that's what slows it down. But I also love the parts with, like I said, with Owen when he's in his second reality and he meets a former ex of his, Megan, which was the woman that he was with when he lived in London before he came to Torchwood. And like Jack says to him at the end of the story, which is a brilliant line, and also again links in with the whole overarching title and story of Another Life, was the fact of, through this story, Owen is trying to live his life as being in Torchwood, but he's also trying to live his past life. And Jack basically says to him, because that was another life. The reason I chose you and the reason I chose everybody in the team is because you're the best of the best, but you're also very human. You've also got your own quirks, and you surprise me and make me proud of each one of you every single day. But you've got to realize, and he says this to Owen, is the fact of that life that you lived in London, it's over now. Like, you can't reclaim it. You can't go back to it. This is your life now with Torchwood. This is your family. And again, I can't go into the reason as to why the conversation, because again, spoilers and stuff like that. But Owen basically realizes at that point of like he has Jack's respect, and that's what he was really going for. And even the series as well, you notice it in the series how Owen is constantly trying for the respect of Jack, but never knowing how to do it and never going the right way of doing it. And again, in the last few episodes of Torchwood and the first season, you can tell that a lot of things he's doing is like, this is what Jack would have done. This is what Jack is. This is how Jack would have done it if he was in this situation, and Jack's not here, so I'm the second in command, and blah blah blah. So he's always trying to look for Jack's approval, which I thought was great. And again, the book still feels very much like Torchwood. It's still got the swearing, it's still got the sexual innuendos. They say shag how many times I don't know, which is great because you don't actually hear that even in the UK, which is it's a very common English word, shag, but it's not a word you hear nowadays. I haven't heard somebody use that word in a long time. So it was funny reading the book and just going, oh, shag, I haven't heard that word in a while. But I see how many times I can repeat that word to get some Americans to start saying shag and shagging, because it's funny. It's a funny word. Like, we all know what it means, but it doesn't sound sexual if you don't know. It's just like shag. What the hell, shag? Anyway, I don't want to get into that. The point is I'm trying to make is the fact if it still has the isms, it still feels like Torchwood to a T. And again, like I said, at times it's well written and the characters are well written. You get a lot more exploration into Gwen, into you tell she's still green, she's still very much learning the ins and outs of how Torchwood works and how Jack is, and again the story pretty much places characters together. So the majority of the story, it's Gwen and Jack is very much trying to take Gwen under his wing, as you would expect, because she's still new, trying to show her the ropes and how we do things here in Torchwood. But Gwen's obviously trying to teach him of like, well, this is how we actually do things in the police. And again, that leads into the series when Gwen basically takes over as like, this is how we actually do a sort of investigation nowadays. Because like I mentioned in that review, the people in Torchwood, they're so out of touch with reality because they're in their own little bubble that it takes somebody like Gwen to come in and to change that. And they do. So I love the exploration of that. We get more, like I said, of Owen. We get more of Tosh as well. She has a lot to do, but she don't get a lot of exploration into her as a character, which is a bit of a shame because I really do love Tosh. I just feel like in the show and in this, we didn't get a lot of time with her. So I'm hoping with series 2 and with more of the books, we get a lot more time with her. Same with Yanto in this one. He's still very mysterious, but again, I think the reason for, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is the continuity of where this book is set, and the reason why he is so estranged to the rest of the group. Where he's there, he's part of the group, but he's at the same stage isn't as well. So yeah, I love the character development that we get here and there. Again, you learn more about Jack. You learn more about the idea of how he sort of deals with life, because he's immortal. So he's a lot more blasé, a lot more casual, a lot more. He cares, but at the same stage, he's a lot more reckless and stuff. And then again, you get that dynamic between him and Gwen, where Gwen's basically trying to understand as to who he is and what he's trying to do. So I love that. As for the sort of continuity that I keep hinting at, so as I always do whenever when I was doing my Doctor Who book reviews and when I was looking into sort of other things as well, I always like to do my continuity. I always look to see of how does this tie in with the overarching series. And I managed to make a few notes. So at this point in the story, Gwen is the only current team member who is aware that Jack cannot die. So that kind of makes it's before everything changes, that TV episode. It's before that. You've also got like the Balrog nuclear facility, which was seen in Boomtown, which I mentioned before. Gwen has been trained by Jack to use firearms, which then links into the TV episode Ghost Machines. You also have Yanto being very sort of mysterious about his business in the basement. Like there's a moment in the story where Owen gets taken over by this entity, and he like him, and you've got Gwen, and you've got you've got him, Tosh, and Yanto are all locked inside the hub, and they're trying, and so you've got Yanto and Tosh trying to hunt down Owen, and there's a moment where Tosh basically says to Yanto, she basically goes, "Oh, he's in the basement. Who knows what he find down there?" And there's this moment where there's this bit of dialogue where it basically explains how the look on Yanto's face, where he has that very surprised, sort of like worried look of like, oh my god, he's in the basement. And obviously we know from watching the show the reason why that is because again of the Cyberwoman, we know what he has in the basement, but up until this point in this story, in this book, they haven't experienced the Cyberwoman yet. So Yanto is still mysterious, and I do like that as a character development because again, if you haven't watched the show, you don't know why he's being so mysterious and being so sort of weird when it comes to the basement and people skulking around the hub, especially when they're not meant to be here. Like he even has a moment when like he worries because Jack never leaves the hub. He even has a bed, but he even says in the story he's never actually seen Jack use the bed. He's actually never seen him sleep, and he worries the fact of if he's going to snoop around. But also we know, as watching the show, we know what Yanto does when the whole team leaves the hub. He basically goes down into the basement and talks to his Cyberwoman wife, really. So I love that as a development as well. If you've only read the books, you will see him as just a very weird and mysterious fellow, which he is anyway. So I love that. So those are the little things that I noticed here and there. Again, as for the world building, Jack mentions Unit as well. I love this part where there's Jack for some reason has a radiation sponge, and because Owen gets what's the word? He gets too close to the nuclear fuel rods. He becomes radioactive. So then he gives Owen the sponge. He's like, hold this sponge, it will absorb all of the radiation in you and in the surrounding area, but once you're done, once you're clear, put it back in this lead lined box. Don't take it anywhere else because it will absorb all radiation everywhere. So like I love that. I love these little things here and there. And yeah, so overall I really, really enjoyed it. One thing I also noticed, and it isn't really, really important, it was just a little thing that I noticed because I'm one of these people that notice these small things. So in this book, Owen owns a Porsche Boxster, which is a wonderful car. It's a poor man's 911, to be honest. Not any offense to anybody who listens to this who has a 911 or has a Boxster even. But if you can't afford a 911, you buy a Boxster. Anyway, that's not the point. That's just my Top Gear brain. Anyway, the point is I'm trying to make is the fact of as this story goes on, Owen keeps saying he's like, I've got this Porsche, but I don't know if I wanted it. I should have bought the Honda S2000, which is a beautiful car, by the way. And it's kind of funny, and again, it's a little thing that I noticed and I wrote down in my notes was the fact of in the episode. What was the episode? I feel bad because I really, really love the episode. The episode when you get all those people from the 1950s come through the rift and come back to modern times, and then the Torchwood team is trying to figure out how to look after and adapt these people to this timeline, even though they're very sort of out of time sort of situation. And the reason I bring that up is the fact of in that episode when Owen is running after his love of his life, he pulls up in a Honda S2000. And I love that. I love that little bit of detail where he realized he mentioned this novel of like, I should have bought that car. I really don't like, I got the Porsche, but I didn't want it sort of thing. I don't like it. And I don't know if it will get mentioned again in any of the books. If it doesn't, it's not an issue because it's a small little detail. I just like that little detail of like, if you pay attention, you will notice the fact of he has a Porsche in this story, but he has a Honda in the series because that was the car that he wanted originally, you know? But yeah, that was a small little thing that I noticed that I just wanted to mention. As for my overall thoughts on this book, Another Life, it is good. There are parts where I did enjoy it. There are parts where there is, it links to the series and great character development and interesting story. It's just the pacing that lets it down. This book could have been a lot better than it was, and it could have been brilliant. And I wish I could sit here and go, it is a 4-star. It even could be close to a 4.5 out of 5 sort of stars. It could generally be up there. It's just the fact of, for me personally, because the pacing is a bit off and the spelling mistakes and grammar errors, it really, for me personally, pulled me out. It might not affect you, again, if you're not dyslexic or if you're not somebody that notices those sort of things, it might not affect you and might not pull you out of it. But for me personally, it did. But I would still recommend, if you're a Torchwood fan, to give it a read, to give it a go. It does a brilliant job of setting up Torchwood. I've set up the world and universe of Torchwood, which is very important if you've never experienced the TV show, if you've never experienced Torchwood before. And again, the characters are brilliant. It still feels like Torchwood. It has the swearing, it has the sex, has the innuendos and all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed that from the show, then you'll love it. To be honest, it was just the pacing that really put me off. But apart from that, it's not a bad book. It's a very average. It's a 3.5. It has the essence of potential greatness, but it just stumbles at the hurdle for me. So yeah, that's my thoughts and feelings on Torchwood Another Life. The next book, I believe, is Border Prince. So I'm looking forward to giving that a read, because that one is written by, I think, Dan Abbott. Who, if you know your Warhammer 40k lore, then Dan Abnett, I've just checked it. He is known for writing a lot of the like Horus Rising and a lot of the Warhammer 40k novels, which I haven't started any, but I have friends who read them and they just wax lyrical of how good and brilliant they are. So if he's writing one of these books, I'm excited to see what he does going forward. So I'm very, very excited for the next book. But until then, please do check out my thoughts and feelings on series 1 of Torchwood. If you haven't checked it out yet, I will go into full depth of every single episode and my thoughts and feelings on Torchwood and the world building and all the characters and all that jazz in that episode. And check out all the other episodes and all the other book reviews that I've done this year and I've done prior years, and all the Doctor Who stuff that I've done as well. There's tons of Doctor Who stuff, and I am planning on, once I finish these books, to look into a lot more Doctor Who Pacific stuff. So until then, stick around, enjoy yourself, follow me on Spotify if you're listening on there and you haven't yet. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, write a comment down below on YouTube, write a comment down below on Spotify. Let me know on Twitter at howdybeans_pod what you thought of this review, or if you've read any of the other Torchwood books or anything like that. Please do let me know. And yeah, so I have been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Howdy Beans podcast, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.